In this video, we'll talk about different ways to enter data in your scorecard and your KPIs with the BSC Designer Professional. So what we have discussed so far was the manual data entry. How to do it? We pick some indicator in the scorecard, we select some date in the calendar, and then we introduce some data into the value field. Manual entry, the basic one, but that's what you have. Sometimes we need to do some more complex things. How to do this? Here we have this small button, which is data source button, that gives us an access to more interesting options for data entry. For example, this one, use a formula for the value. When I choose this option, I have an access to value editor, where I can use other indicators. For example, we can use improve sales, probably, just an example, the value of this indicator multiplied by the performance of, for example, response time. So the software builds a formula for us. We can test this formula. Obviously 0 because the performance we multiply by 0. So let's put here sum instead of this. Yeah, so we have got some value. We can pick if we want to round the value to some nice looking number. And that's a way we can build a formula for this indicator, for the value of this indicator. Another way to import data into the software is to pick this option and start importing from MS Excel document. The steps are quite basic. You pick the source document, follow the steps. Well, again, there are some nuances that we describe in a separate video. But if you need to import from Excel, you need to start with this option. A different option that again was described in the different video tells us how to link to a MS Excel document. And in the contrast from the previous option, this time the link will be established with the document. So when we import from a MS Excel document, we do a one-time import. Yeah, so when we need to import from the same Excel spreadsheet, but import a different data from the same spreadsheet, we'll need to repeat the whole process. In the contrast, when we have this option, the link will be established with an Excel spreadsheet. So when you will update some value in Excel spreadsheet, it can be automatically fetched by BSC Designer Professional and the value of respective indicator can be updated. So in a separate video, we discuss the details of both options, and I do recommend to check them out if you're interested in how to do this import from Excel or do a link to Excel. The next option is a link to BSC Designer Scorecard, created with BSC Designer Professional or created with BSC Designer Online. This option allows us to do what we are calling cascading. So we can link to Scorecard in this way. We can create imported indicator that will take its value from a different scorecard. And of course, the most recommended way is to connect to the cloud-based BSC Designer Online and connect to Scorecard there. If not, you can also do import from scorecards that are located on your own computer. So this option allows us to build a cascade of scorecards. The next option is for getting value from SQL database. So you're supposed to have an access to some local database or some web database with permitted access. And using this option, you can get a value for your indicator from this database. Linking to a web-based script, what does it work for? So here we have an option to link to some script located online that is generating some data for our scorecard. Think about your internal software that you might want to change to be able to generate data for BSC Designer Professional. So you can pass to this script some data. For example, it can be the name of the indicator or the current date selected here in the calendar in BSC Designer Professional. And the software, your script located in your web server, for example, will return some value that BSC Designer Pro will use for the value field here. So this is one of the options that you can do to integrate BSC Designer with some third-party tool. Finally, we have here Dataseries. And if you select this option, a new tab will appear here. This tab helps us to manage different data series. So we have a separate video, we'll discuss this in the details. But to understand what it works for, think about surveys that we normally do with some experts. So when we have different experts and we ask them similar questions, and here on our scorecard we want to see or the answers of a selected expert or some averaged answers of all experts. Okay, and one option to fill in data in BSC Designer Pro that is not listed here, but it is still available, is what we can find, for example, here when we quit from simple mode. Here we have this function, which is target wizard. So what does it work for? Imagine that you have, for example, for retention rate, you have certain plans. So you want to increase the retention rate from 70% to, let's say, 90%. And you want to do it in several months. Start in February, ending in June. How to do this? Well, it's up to you, but the software helps you to plan the target values accordingly. So if we start with 70 and we need to finish with the value 90 by June, the software can plan for you these target values. Okay, so if you agree with the proposed plan, you just click OK. As we can see now in Edit Values, we have some targets for this indicator. Okay, on this point, I also wanted to mention that having BSC Designer Professional that works for Windows, you have some interesting features, but comparing it to BSC Designer Online, the cloud-based, in terms of different ways to enter data, the BSC Designer Online sometimes wins. Why? Because BSC Designer Online has two important features that BSC Designer Pro doesn't have, because BSC Designer Pro is a desktop software. And in BSC Designer Online, you will find RESTful API, which is a programming option that allows a very tight integration with third-party tools. And in BSC Designer Online, you will find a quite quite complex functionality related to user rights and various functions related to this context. So for example, in BSC Designer Online, you can set a right to access only certain scorecards, and you can also assign a right, or it's better to say that you can limit the right to modify some historical data for some indicators. You can limit the right to view only data for certain indicators and that things. So just to mention that you have all this in a cloud-based BSC Designer Online. So it's a good idea to consider both software tools before buying, to understand what functionality is critical for you, if you need one of the tools or both of them. I think that's all for this input for this video. We're talking about different ways to input data into the key performance indicator in BSC Designer Professional.